Normally, community has a fairly universal definition within most people. Typically, one thinks of the people in the same general physical area, maybe a wealthy zip code, maybe a poorer one. And maybe it's one that's very close-knit, like in the movie The Heights, where the city neighborhood is put forth as an idealized community complete with song and dance. Being in such a community where there is a strong sense of belonging and responsibility to each other probably comes closest to what our ancestors evolved to thrive in. It turns out anything past 150 people is hard for most mortal minds to remember names and faces and details of the people of the band or tribe, and so, as domesticated creatures in our own rat utopia of modern existence, we find our community in shifting amorphous groups, sometimes temporary, sometimes situational. Sometimes there are groups in which the term community has more weight and staying power due to the purposeful engineering and aligning of values of its members. Shared initiation rituals, special language, loyalty, rules, and discipline. We can certainly go over 150 members doing that, and we typically call these communities cults. The military of the United States uses many of the same methods to engineer conformity amongst its members, but the military has some key differences, and so most don't call it a cult. But the different forms of the armed services generally can be thought of as a community. While there have been moments in history where victories were shared as such, more often the community shares burdens and common struggles. Homelessness, suicide, mental health problems affect veterans at a higher rate than the rest of the population. But that's not to say veterans are merely victims of some universally horrible experience that is nothing but negative. The veteran community has support, albeit far from perfect, from the VA, and during the course of their varied experiences, many have developed leadership skills, enhanced resiliency, confidence, and a host of other positive attributes that come from challenging experiences. As a veteran, I've seen the good, bad, and the ugly when it comes to what it means to be part of that community. I feel a sense of shared humanity with all people, but it is certainly easier to relate to someone who knows some of the things you've had to go through. And that's a bond that goes both ways. While there are other veterans that have it much worse, and certainly a few with no issues at all, it certainly seems that what causes threads of connection are the shared stories of similar past experiences. Sometimes good, but usually bad, let's be honest, we love to share complaints. Confiding about similar difficulties in the present, like the process of getting any VA disability being a full-time job in and of itself, and sharing concerns about our nation's future because we have investment in it. Part of that investment for me is seeing that service is necessarily a much wider endeavor than the application of violence for the nation's political ends. I'd be surprised if anyone who is intimately close to violence wouldn't at some point in their lives feel the need to even the scales a bit. It's not guilt that drives me towards this career path, though I'd be lying if I said it had nothing to do with it. Guilt is our brain's way of alerting us that something isn't quite right, and while it can be a very destructive force, it can provide a sense of agency, that if we do things different in the future, we can make different futures. Our guilt hides hope within it. And while hope can be problematic in its own way, it's the subject of another video, which reminds me, smash that like button and hit subscribe to make sure you get all the latest updates. It really means a lot. Back to the content. Hello, welcome back. So, what do I hope to do? What kind of changes in the future do I think are compatible with my personality, my skills, and where I have growth potential? Well, never say never, of course, but I'm fairly certain it won't be at the macro-political and legislative policy level for reasons already known. Instead, I believe I can cause the most positive difference engaging one-on-one with individuals. I've visualized therapy settings most likely because I've been on the receiving end of so many therapy sessions it's become quite familiar. And I've had years of pondering the ways in which the mind works and what makes effective versus ineffective therapy. There's a very powerful story in the Latino USA podcast episode Healing Chamayo. It tells a story of Lupe Salazar, who suffered tremendous loss and death as a result of the opioid epidemic in northern New Mexico. Her story was a journey of someone with tragic first-hand knowledge of a problem, deciding to make change and doing so through all levels, micro, meso, and macro. Not only did her first-hand experience drive her motivation, but it gave her the unique authority and perspective to seek out and make the changes where she saw that she could make the most difference. Similarly, I see myself in the veterans I plan to help in the future. My experience, like Lupe's with drug addiction, gives me a unique perspective and authority through my experience with PTSD and mental health care for veterans. I also have seen what works and what doesn't, and given the chance, I could see myself advocating on all three levels if I saw a way to do so. In fact, Lupe's story has been quite influential on my views on the possibility of change on the macro level. Seeing her successes has reminded me that although there are many challenges and frustrations on that level, it's still necessary for people to step up and do that work. There are always a variety of ways to do so. It seems like the next step is to find a way congruent with my talents and values, hoist the sails, and catch the winds of destiny wherever they lead. Pictured here is a painting I did when I was in college. It pictures various symbols of the profession at arms in which I was about to embark, and for me it represented transitions. I changed majors from music to biology as I pursued a career in aviation. And looking back, it was a privileged time of my life. I could decide what I wanted to do and pursue it. It also was a fairly self-centered time as well. What I wanted to do was my top priority, and my notions of making an impression on the world might as well been create a painting about my own life and dreams. Later, after achieving them, and wondering what next, the collection of life's lessons, and some of those were quite harsh, all seemed to point to another mode of thinking, where self-centeredness becomes a shallow existence. We are all ephemeral. There is no mark on the world that will be permanent. Looking over the social work core competencies, to take stock of how many I've managed to address in this video, of course, I see that 4 of the 9 are variations on a theme of other-centeredness. Always something to be done with individuals, families, groups, organizations, and communities. And it all makes perfect sense. In our interconnectedness, the canvas of our transitions to this new phase of life will be those people and structures. It will be ephemeral, and it will be the most important art we could make.